with each rev of VMFS, the code that's focused on locking and lock management has gotten simpler and simpler and simpler, which means it's harder and harder and harder for the array vendor or the ESX VM kernel code to get itself into a weird, buggered up state. But ultimately, even the VAI hardware-assisted locking thing that's focused on just locking the metadata, even that is like a baby step towards just lose locking altogether and find different ways to handle the metadata. The thing I would say in defense of the VMFS team, since they're not here to defend themselves, is Satyam and gang have developed something which is the industry's simplest distributed metadata locking implementation on the planet, right? So VMFS does not come with a manual, right? Every other distributed metadata locking file system on the planet has a manual that's like this thick, right? And the number of things you can do to screw yourself up is like a manual that's like this thick, right? So I hear you, but in their defense, I'd say they've developed something that uses locking to make an easy implementation of making sure that they don't need a lock manager, right? A centralized lock manager, but sometimes it does result in that bad scenario. There are actually ways to force a lock being released. I don't know why they're not documented a little more clearly, because obviously if you do it incorrectly, you could really damage yourself.
We can get that. Support will give that out if people are supported in that circumstance, and I know it's usually a difficult time, but our support will give you that information.
Yeah, but you're probably thinking about the MTFS tools -B, right? But it doesn't necessarily help, because if you're not able to run it from the host that owns them up,
No,
you won't be able to break it.
what I'm telling you is there's another way that is a little more secret than that way. Right? So at the array level or at the, there's other ways of getting at it other than running that command on the service console or via the VMA. And there are ways on the array which are very complex. And the reason that the array vendors are freaked out about telling somebody that is that your ability to damage more is much, much broader, right? So if you make the error on the array, you could potentially bork up a lot of stuff, right? And every array vendor and every VMware folk, and if anybody says, well, that's vendor X's problem, right? Every vendor has had a bad lock situation. And VMware themselves have been the root cause of some. Sometimes it's the storage vendor that's the root cause of them. But they're very painful, but they're very rare. That when they do occur, the pain is so great that they get amplified. Other questions?
Something that would be really nice in Virtual Center would be to have a performance view of the data stores.
Yeah.
From the data store perspective.
So by the way, the next version of our vCenter plugin has a whole bunch of performance stuff added, but there's a general view that you can see some stuff within vCenter today, but if I put words in your mouth, what you're saying is, I'd like to see an end-to-end performance thing that shows it at the VM, the vSCSI layer of the stack.
Give me the
data
top 5
store.
VMs that are IO intensive on that data store.
So what was the question?
It's actually important
specific
of vSphere.
Yeah, so
I saw it the other day by accident, that you can actually see which virtual machines on VMFS, how many IOPS they are.
Right, so you can see that, but I think what he's saying is, give us a top 10, dashboard type thing. There are some pretty cool third-party tools that do that, just as an FYI. Again, I'm trying to use this in a non-commercial sense for us or for anybody, but there are some cool tools out there that do that. And I know that that's something that we're working on. So it's good to hear someone say it because it's being worked on. Okay, last opportunity. You can ask anything. It could be a total nit. It can be something broad.
On the VAI, the 3 primitives,
Mhm.
You see any, is there anything going beyond that? Is there any opportunity to go beyond that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So VAI as it stands now is actually technically called VAI version 1, right? There will be a VAI version 2. I think we've danced around it enough that it's apparent that it'll add some primitives for NFS-based use cases, but also expands out the primitives broadly. If you want to get a hint of where some of those things are going, if you take a look at the stuff that was added to the SCSI standard recently, right, because it all has to be done for the block side via those SCSI standards as well as other mechanisms. There's a ton of other ones out there. I'll give you an example that we think is cool is, like right now we've got the zero init, the hardware accelerated zero init. There's a lot of other things around storage reclamation that are linked to like OS behavior, S deletes inside guests and stuff like that. It'd be great to not need to do all that stuff. So lots and lots of, expect to see more down the path of VAI, and expect to see more and more ideas along those paths. Not just from EMC, of course, but from anyone who wants to do it. Guys, thank you. Very much appreciated. Thank you for being VMware customers. If you're an EMC customer, raise your hand. Thank you for being EMC customers. If you're not an EMC customer, thank you for being whatever you are. If there's a question that you think of afterwards, you can always ping me on Virtual Geek and ask. Right? Even if it's on, if you can't find a blog post that's like, a good place to ask it, just ask it on any blog post. Right? I'll see the comment and I'll do my best to answer. Again, much appreciated. Hopefully this has been good for everybody. I think that there's no other slides, right? Caught forward. Oh, look at this. So just quickly, because I want to make sure we get a survey answer. Right? So do you replicate? Do you replicate offsite but don't use SRM? It'd be criminal not to get this survey, right? I do replicate offsite and I use VMware SRM. I don't replicate, and if not, it's too expensive. I don't replicate, it's too expensive, and it's due to WAN cost. This is like, I can't afford the second array. This is, I can't afford the cost, even though I could afford the second array. I don't replicate, DR isn't a requirement. 19, 22, we've got some holdouts. You can tell Maurizio will be out there in a bit. Okay, great. So, most replicate but don't use SRM. The next biggest category is I do it and I use SRM. And then the next category is I don't replicate, I don't have a second site. And then I don't replicate because I can't afford the second way. That's fascinating. Fascinating. Okay, so quick question. Why don't you use SRM?
Let me put it another way. What do we gain from it?
Man, oh man.
Besides from the fact that you don't have to move your virtual machines.
I'll put it to you this way. Look, everything that SRM does can be scripted, right? Everybody needs to understand it, right? I have never once seen a customer that actually maintains a real DR script.
I've done it on behalf of a customer, and it was about a year of charting applications and writing scripts.
Right, so I'm with you.
Yeah.
Do you think that that script is still current?
Absolutely not.
That, guys, is the answer to that core question.
Most of the customers I work with said if we have our data and we have a catastrophic failure on our primary data side, we just take that day it will take to start everything up manually on the other side.
I hear you. They say that until it happens. And then they find out it's not going to be a day, it's going to be like a month and a half. And yeah. But interesting, so it just highlights more communication, more marketing, and more selling. That's interesting. Okay, quick, next. Are there any, skip this. Cloud storage models. Is anyone using these external cloud storage models? S3, Atmos. I already do. I don't plan to. I have no idea what you're talking about. Just because I would really be bummed if I didn't capture this data. It's all about me. All right, let's go. Let's see. So by the way, for the people that don't know what I'm talking about, how many people here in the room use Facebook? Has anyone ever posted a YouTube video? Right? Those things don't exist on like NAS or SAN models. They exist on these massive scale-out object storage models. Right? They don't sit on more traditional storage stuff because it doesn't scale big enough. The cost models are whack. And also when you access the stuff in those models, you don't access it via whack server name, whack file name, right? It's accessed via web object. So that's interesting. I don't plan to. Who are the people who said this? I don't know. So what are your plans?
Me?
No, there's a guy right behind you.
It's just an option. It's another option for us. We have a lot of things that are, let's say, non-confidential, commodity stuff to store, and the economies of scale often dictate to us, and the opportunity to access from multiple areas.
Place, yeah.
It's a good option for us.
Did anyone else say yes? Let's go to the next one. Okay. Do you see good? Oh, wait a second. Do you find that VMware and vendors provide you guys good support? Who says yes? So in other words, when the proverbial poop hits the fan, right? Does VMware work well with your storage vendor, and does your storage vendor work well with VMware to support you? Who says yes? Who says no? What could we do better?
I think VMware must open all APIs, vStorage API, for example, to every vendor, for example.
That's
That's the case, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty open. I mean, the storage vendors, some of them support, some of them don't. But, okay, cool. We've talked about this, and great, guys. Thank you very much. Very much appreciate it.
Do you have your card or where you go to plan?
Wasn't it be on